Some poems save your life, but the last poem she wrote almost destroyed mine. My name is Evan Carter, a 23-year-old poet from Chicago who thought words were the safest place to hide. I believed poetry was honest, until I discovered a poem written about me years before I ever met the woman who wrote it. Her name was Margaret Hale, my 44-year-old editor, brilliant, elegant, untouchable. The kind of woman whose presence felt like standing too close to a burning fireplace, dangerous but impossible to step away from. She discovered me. She shaped me. She changed my entire career. But the night I stumbled upon her last unpublished poem, my world shattered. Because the poem didn't just talk about love. It talked about a boy she once lost. A boy connected to a tragedy. A boy whose name she never mentioned. A boy who had my birthday, my scars, my past. That was the night I realized Margaret didn't walk into my life accidentally. She'd been watching the shadows of my past long before she ever edited my work, and what she was hiding would cost both of us everything. Evan Carter never believed his poetry would go anywhere. He lived in a tiny studio apartment, working late nights at a bookstore, writing verses on coffee-stained receipts. Everything changed the day he received a letter stamped with the golden insignia of Hale Publishing, one of the biggest literary houses in the U.S. Inside was a handwritten note. "Your voice is rare. Let me help you refine it." Margaret Hale. The first time Evan walked into her office, he felt the weight of her presence. Margaret was confident, composed, and carried the kind of sorrow people hide behind perfection. She read his poems slowly, carefully, as if every line contained a truth she was terrified to touch. "You write like someone twice your age, Evan," she whispered.
"Oh."
"And someone who has suffered. Far more than you admit." He didn't understand how she could see through him so quickly. But he felt drawn to her, not romantically, not yet, but magnetically, like she understood the invisible parts of him. Margaret became more than an editor. She became the person who believed in him when he didn't believe in himself. But belief has a cost. And Margaret Hale was paying one silently. As months passed, Evan learned fragments of her life. Margaret lived alone in an old townhouse filled with books, framed poems, and the quiet ache of memories. She never spoke about her past, but Evan could sense its weight. One afternoon during a review session, he asked, "Why do you edit poetry, of all things?" She froze. For the first time, her polished mask cracked.
"Ass."
"Because," she said softly, "poetry is the only place where regret can breathe." Evan didn't understand the meaning then, not until much later. The more he visited her, the more he felt something growing between them. Not flirting, not desire, but a deep emotional pull, a connection neither of them dared to name. Margaret would smile when he wasn't looking. Evan would memorize the sound of her laughter. Their silences became conversations of their own. But she kept her distance, always stepping back when he stepped closer, as if she was terrified of loving someone who reminded her of a ghost. One rainy evening, Evan arrived early to drop off revisions. Margaret wasn't home, but her assistant told him to leave the pages on her desk. He stepped into her study, the one room she kept locked during their meetings. Books lined the walls, but one drawer caught his eye. It was half open, as if left in a hurry. Inside were dozens of old unpublished poems, and on top of the stack, a page titled "The Boy with the Broken Spring." His heart pounded. He read it. He was 12 when the world took too much from him. Carried guilt that was never his to hold. I should have saved him. But I failed, and now I search for him in every poem I read. Evan froze. The poem described a childhood accident he never spoke about. Something only 3 people in the world knew. Something that shaped every wound he carried. There was no way Margaret could know, unless she had been part of his past. When Margaret returned, she found Evan standing in the study, holding the poem she never wanted him to see. Her face drained of color. "You weren't supposed to read that," she whispered. "Margaret, who is the boy in this poem?" Her hands trembled. She sat down slowly, as if the truth weighed too much to carry. "Evan, I knew your mother." Silence hit him like thunder. "She was my closest friend," Margaret continued. "When that accident happened, the one you never talk about, she blamed herself. And after she passed," her voice cracked, "I couldn't forgive myself for not being there for you." Evan staggered backward. "You knew me? You watched me?" "My whole life." "No," she said firmly. I looked for you for years. I wanted to help you. But I never approached you. Not until your poems came across my desk. When I read your work, I recognized the pain, and you didn't tell me. I was afraid you'd hate me. Her truth shattered him. Everything between them, every look, every emotion came into question. But one thing didn't. The way she looked at him, not with guilt. With love she was terrified to admit. Days passed. Evan stopped responding. Margaret didn't sleep. When he finally returned to her office, she expected anger. Instead, Evan whispered, "All this time, I thought no one understood me." She did. Margaret shook her head. "Evan, whatever you're feeling, it isn't real. It's confusion. I'm too old. I'm too tied to your past. You deserve someone who isn't broken." He stepped closer. "I don't want someone else." Her breath caught. This was wrong. This was dangerous. But emotions don't follow rules. She looked into his eyes, the same eyes she once saw in a lost 12-year-old boy, now filled with something deeper, stronger, something she couldn't resist anymore. But loving him meant risking everything she had left, her career, her reputation, his future, his trust. And yet, the distance between them vanished. Margaret disappeared for 3 days. No calls, no messages, nothing. When Evan finally found her, she was sitting in her garden, holding a sealed envelope. "This is the last poem I'll ever write for you," she said. He opened it. "If love had met us at the right time, I would have held your hand without fear. But you deserve a world without my shadows. And I deserve to finally forgive myself." Asterisk tears blurred the ink. "I'm leaving Hale Publishing," she said softly. "I won't let my past destroy your future." Evan dropped the letter. "I don't care about the world. I care about you." Margaret placed her hand on his cheek. "Then promise me. Promise you'll keep writing. Promise you'll become everything your mother hoped you'd be. And what about us? There will always be an us, just not the kind you're dreaming of." She kissed his forehead, a goodbye, a beginning, and a wound he would carry forever. The next day, Margaret Hale vanished from the literary world. But every poem Evan wrote afterward carried one truth. She wasn't the woman who saved him. She was the reason he learned what love truly costs.